Well, Arpin, I realized that we are both in rather unusual locations. Usually I'm in my office, my little den.
Smart just blink 3 times. Blink 3 times if you need help. Okay.
Oh gosh, too late. Yeah, I know. That's my
handcuffs. Show the handcuffs on camera. Yeah.
It's my little cell at Radio Canada. But where are you?
I'm at the Centre de Sport de Gatineau. Daughter's in the senior national championships for water polo. She's 17, but she plays senior now, and so anyhow, it's got a big game this afternoon, and so I'm just getting the pod in before this big game.
Okay, very quickly before we get on to hockey, just a water polo question. Any chance she might go like to the Olympics in 2028?
2028?
Or would it be 2032?
That would be, yeah. If she, there's a chance. Sure.
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, she would have to stick with it. She would have to want, like, it was never really that was never really the driving force for her, was to go. In fact, she never even thought it was possible. And so now it actually is possible. I mean, she's going to the U20 World Championships this summer, and she's 17. So she's on the right track for sure. So it's definitely, if she sticks with it, yeah, it would be a possibility. And then I could finally go to a Summer Olympics.
Yeah.
Just go to the Winter Olympics all the time. Yeah.
And then I'll cover her.
And then you can cover her. Exactly. You just got to stay at Radio Canada till 2032, and then you'll be in business.
Yeah, that should be doable.
Yeah.
All right. But before 2032, there's the summer. We will, obviously, it's not because the Canadiens are eliminated that we're going to stop talking about them. There's plenty of things to cover, and today we're going to look a little bit at the summer. And there's a bit of news coming from the World Championships, mainly the fact that the Canadiens have Mike Matheson going to the Worlds, which is great news for him. They've got Emil Heinemann, who's been added to the Swedish
Funny that
team.
Hockey Canada wants Mike Matheson to play for the national team when he's such a terrible defenseman. It's weird, huh?
I know.
It's so strange that they want that. It's so odd.
Yeah,
I know. That's really weird. Anyhow.
So Emil Heinemann has been added to the Swedish team, and you've got Vincent Rohrer, who's going to play for Austria. Nick Suzuki has not been cleared. And so because of the different ailments and injuries that he's been playing through during the end of the regular season and the playoffs, he decided, or was told, it's unclear, but basically he won't be given the green light to join Team Canada.
I don't know if it's unclear. I mean, Nick made it sound pretty clearly that this was the Canadiens' decision. Now, maybe he was like, hey, you guys want to not clear me? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, kind of like... And maybe that's what they did. I don't know, but he seemed to suggest that he needed to be cleared medically by the Canadiens, and if he was, that he would go. So.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, that's semantics. My question to you is, after we've been talking a lot about the fact that last year when he chose not to go, it was putting him in a very difficult position if he wanted to be included in the Canadian team for the Four Nations and afterwards for the Olympics. But he bounced back second half of the season, and especially after the 4 seasons, the Four Nations, the way that he finished the year as a very, very impactful and elite centerman in the league. Do you think that his play in the NHL is enough in itself to get him closer to a spot to the Olympic team, or is he faced basically in a tight competition with Robert Thomas, who basically did exactly the same thing as he did?
Yeah.
And yeah, so what do you make of him not going to the Worlds at this point?
Well, he mentioned it, and he mentioned it last year in justifying his decision not to go to the World Championships. And of course, you remember after the season, he proposed to his now fiance. He had these plans, he had plans. There was a reason why he didn't go to the Worlds. It wasn't just that he doesn't want to play for Canada. But he did say that, it'll be on me to have a great start to the season to make that team. And he didn't do that. He did not have a great start to the season, so he didn't make that team. And he recognized that. when the team was named. He was disappointed, but he said, I didn't do enough to convince them to put me on the team. Now, he said the exact same thing last week. If I can't go to Worlds, is what he said. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if I can't go to Worlds, I think I've shown a lot in my finish this season, but it'll be on me to have a strong start to next season to get me on that team. So, him not being able to go to Worlds puts added pressure on him. When you heard him talk about the Olympics, how it was a dream of his ever since he was a kid to play in the, like, it seemed extremely important to him. I think he would have gone to Worlds just for that. Like, the World Championships doesn't strike me as something that he's very passionate about, but I think and plus you look at who's over there, like obviously Sidney Crosby and Nate McKinnon, Mark Fleury, like just these guys that he could have been around would make it that much more enticing. And plus it's in Sweden, like it'd be a nice vacation for his girlfriend or fiance now. There's a lot of reasons to go, but the Olympics sounds like that was the main driving force behind it. So he's going to have to come out of the gates much, much, much better than he did this year. Like, that's really what it comes down to. But he's maintained his place in the conversation. Let's just put it that way. Like, he was on the cusp of making that Four Nations team. He just missed the cut, as did Robert Thomas. Both of them took it somewhat personally and used it as motivation to have an incredible end to the season and push each of their respective teams into the playoffs. They're both right shot D. They're both two-way guys, not right shot D, right shot centermen. They're both two-way guys. They're fighting for the same spot, if that spot even exists, right? So it's basically they're not going to take both of them. So, he's going to be, and the funny part about it is, like, Robert Thomas, when I talked to him about it in St. Louis, he was like, I'd always heard about Nick Suzuki. Like, Robert Thomas is a GTA guy and Suzuki was a London guy. It's like, and they're the same age, same draft year, same everything, right? And so he's like, I'd always heard about this Suzuki guy, but basically I've been competing with this guy my whole life. So it's no surprise, but it's kind of funny that it's still happening now, because he like totally recognized that they are competing for the same spot on that team. Like, it's clear as day. They're very similar players. Claude Julien, actually, like when I grabbed him in the hallway there and I asked him, I'm kind of like seeing like similarities between Suzuki and Thomas. Like, what do you think? He's like, oh my God, yes, 100%. Hang on. Like, just, yes, completely similar players. So it's going to be on both of them to come out of the gates hot, because I really think the way they ended the season, I would imagine, especially Doug Armstrong's the GM in St. Louis. So, I think Suzuki's probably starting with a bit further behind Thomas in that sense.
No doubt.
But I'm convinced that Hockey Canada told themselves at the end of the season that, okay, we're taking one of these guys to the Olympics. So it's up to them to decide, basically. So Suzuki's going to have a good start, and that's I think he likes that. I think he likes that part. He didn't respond to it this year, but next year is a different set of circumstances. He knows the production he has in him, so let's see if he can do it.
So next year, if we look at the sort of competition that he faces, Robert Thomas is indeed like direct competition. Mm-hmm. But let's not forget also that Mark Scheifele was not on the roster this year. He's another centerman who's definitely like a good player, different profile in terms of what
very different profile. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to keep an eye on the kids, Bedard and Celebrini. I think that those two might have a chance too. I don't know if Dylan
I found it very strange that Bedard didn't go.
Yeah.
Bedard just chose not to go to the Worlds, which I found weird. Like, if he has a good start next year, like, Hockey Canada has all the incentive in the world to bring Connor Bedard to the Olympics, right? Like, it's for sure strange.
Yeah. I'm not sure, based on the Four Nations, if Anthony Cirelli really convinced everybody at that tournament. I mean, he did during the regular season. He was like a premier 200-foot guy. Probably he was named as a Selke finalist, wasn't he? I think so.
He was first on my ballot.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's just I can't remember. He was on my ballot too. I just forget who were the finalists.
It was Reinhardt, Barkov, and Cirelli.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then but coming out of that tournament, I was thinking, well, was he like leaps and bounds above the other options, such as Thomas and Suzuki, maybe not. And you got some wingers like Marchand. Obviously, Marchand was pretty much his swan song for international competitions, but that's on the wing. And on the wing too, Travis Konechny, probably there's a chance there for an upgrade. So Suzuki could vie for a center position, but there are ways also for all those guys that I named, and you could include maybe Wyatt Johnston to that.
Yeah.
There's also options at the wing
Yeah.
if it's too crowded up the middle.
I mean, the problem with this whole process is the nepotism involved, right? Like John Cooper has a lot to say about who is on the roster ultimately. And I don't think he's going to Italy without Sorelli and Hagel. Like, I just don't think that's an option. So he's going to go with his shutdown guys. And they were both on my Selke ballot. So, I mean, honestly, like legit shutdown pair of forwards. He's going to go with the guys he's comfortable with, which I guess in some sense is normal, but and it would be more. It'd be easier to like kind of look down your nose at that nepotism if it weren't also prevalent in the front office. Like Brad Marchand not only made the team, was one of the 5 original guys named to the team like back in the summer. And who was the GM of that Four Nations team? It was Don Sweeney. So it's like, so that's why I say that, if it comes down to Suzuki and Robert Thomas, unless Suzuki blows Thomas's doors off coming out of the gate, if it's between those two guys, Thomas is probably going to go because his GM is the GM of the team. So Suzuki has to not only beat out Thomas, he has to beat him by a wide enough margin where it would look ridiculous taking Thomas over him. Like basically he has to make it that much more convincing. So tough road, but I think it's unfortunate because you look at this team they have over there, Ryan O'Reilly, like it's a good team. Phil Danault is going. It's a really, really good team. And I think it would have been a good experience for Suzuki to be just around Sidney Crosby, like let alone all the other guys. And hell, if the Canadiens want to recruit the guy and convince him that Montreal might be an option, then what better way than to have your captain over there in his ear every day? You got to know Nathan McKinnon's going to be in his ear every day. Yes. Every day. That Brock Nelson guy that we went out and paid like gobs of stuff for, like you could be in his spot and we would win cups. You could finish your career with multiple cups. Let's do that.
Okay, so let's keep the Crosby talk for Monday.
Let's keep it on the rails. Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep that for Monday's episode. We're going to have our second line center extravaganza. But just to mention the fact that Suzuki finished 4th among Canadian centermen in scoring this year. Yeah. Nathan McKinnon was first, McDavid was second, Crosby was third. And then there's Nick Suzuki.
And Crosby beat him by like 1 point, right? He was like 1 point ahead of him. Sid Crosby? was like 2 point. He's 91. Yeah.
And then you got Scheifele, Point, Duchesne, Dylan Strome, another interesting candidate. So yeah, when you look at that list, it puts into perspective the fact how amazing a push he did at the end of the season. But now this is the company he has surrounded himself with. So that's
it's a small sample though. I mean, that's like we got to keep that in mind. He's only done it this year, and he only did it for basically half of this year. So I feel like he needs to show he could do it again. I think that's and regardless of going to the Worlds or not, he probably would have had to do that anyway. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's on him to do. He's sixth. He's 6th among all centers in scoring.
Yeah,
no matter the country.
Yeah, so, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So okay, so he said you quoted him as saying, "I need to start strong," which means you need to arrive ready. At their end of season press conference, Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes mentioned how it was important for Kirby Dach. It would be an important summer for him, crucial into, how he would define his place on this team next season and the success that he could have. So it's really, they put the onus on him to get ready and have a huge summer, which makes me wonder, apart from Dach, who are the Canadiens players who have the most at stake in their summer preparation and for whom the summer will be pivotal in giving them like a good season next year? Do you have
Well,
guys that have things to lose, and
sure.
despite, yeah.
Well, I think, Yuri Slafkovsky clearly does not want to have a third straight first half where there's just no production, right? And I asked him what he's going to do in the summer to make sure he has a good start. And he kind of defended his summer preparation last year and said he didn't think his slow start was due to his summer preparation. So he's going to maintain that. The adjustment is not going to the World Championships for him and just being singularly focused on starting the season. Hopefully he takes a break from hockey and just doesn't think about it for a while. But other than that, I think, Emil Heineman kind of faded after getting hit by that car in Utah, unfortunately. But he never really picked up the momentum he had before before being a pedestrian in Salt Lake City. All joking aside, though, I mean, he didn't really, he wasn't as noticeable. Like he wasn't getting kind of the big hits. He wasn't creating stuff off the forecheck as much. So I think and him going to the Worlds, I think is great for him. But the one guy that I found curious, and it's going to be a tricky summer for him, is Lane Hudson talking about wanting to put on some weight. And he didn't want to go to like 200. He's never going to go to 200 pounds or whatever. He didn't want to put on a lot of weight that would like significantly change his physiology and the way he plays the game. But he definitely did want to add a few pounds, and he was kind of chill about it. He's like, I'm not going to put a target on it, and if I do that and I see I'm not playing as well, I can always lose the weight and go back to my normal playing weight. But that seems to be like a delicate dance that he's going to do this summer, like trying to get stronger for the playoffs, while not hindering his mobility, his deception, his dexterity, like all the things that make him great. He couldn't do that all bulked up, and I remember Gooley one day saying, like, you guys can't tell, but Hudson's pretty jacked. That was his line. And you look at his legs, he's got really strong legs, but that's
even his torso. Even his torso. He is
he's strong.
Yeah.
But so that's why, like, I wonder, do you want to tinker too much? But that to me said something about how he experienced the playoffs, So that's an interesting summer to me.
Yeah. Regarding Hudson, though, I mean, he mentioned when he was drafted that he wanted to put on some weight. And at Boston University, it was the ideal conditions for him to do that because he had so much time in the gym, theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's always been an argument for playing in college, guys that are undersized or that are not mature physically. The schedule makes it so that you can bulk up. And, I realized, though, that in 23-24, coming back at BU, there was not any real change in terms of his weight. Probably that he bulked up in terms of strength, and you can tell by the physiology. Mm-hmm. But in terms of pure weight, he gained maybe 4 or 5 pounds from his first year to his second year, and it has stayed there since. So it's going to be also, as much as he wants to make sure that he doesn't put on too much weight and that he would hamper maybe his mobility or his speed or whatever, I just wonder, is he simply going to be able to put on weight? Because those 2 years at BU did not demonstrate to me that this is something. It may be that he decided to focus on other stuff and said, you know what, I am good at the way I'm playing, at the weight that I'm currently playing at, and I'm just going to focus.
Yeah, he didn't have the incentive to do it.
Yeah,
his weight wasn't a factor at BU. I mean, yes, there are big guys coming after him, but they couldn't catch him, and Tom Wilson caught him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he took a really heavy hit. I think it was in game 1 or 2. It was in Washington, but Tom Wilson hit him flush in the jaw, and it really, I think it affected him a little bit, but yeah, like that's a normal takeaway to have coming out of a series like that, and so I think he can put on weight, but he has to be careful. It's a real thin line for him to over bulk up and lose your feet in any way or any kind of, your agility, like, you don't want to mess with the balance that he has right now. So he seems cognizant of that. He's heard it his whole life. He's played more or less at that weight for a long time. I think he'll be able to feel the difference if he needs to adjust or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see if he comes in not that much, like maybe 5, 6 pounds heavier next year, um, and if that makes a difference or not. Like I think I'm very curious to see what that looks like.
So you got three guys there: Slav, Heineman, and Hudson. Very interesting choices. I would throw in three other guys. In terms of bulking up, I think Caden Gooley's at a point where, to me, if he wants to showcase the physicality of his game on a more regular basis, and also probably put more meat around the bone just to protect himself, maybe if it can help him protect himself from injuries. I don't know. Obviously, not the fluky one that he got
From
at the end,
himself.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but just the way that he absorbs contact mainly. But I think
I think
that
he improved. I think he improved in how he absorbs contact though this year. He really didn't get rocked nearly as often as he did before, I
no,
find.
no. Well, it's a learning process for many guys. It was
Yeah.
Slav was a fast learner, but you remember Jake Evans. It took him years
Oh god,
to
yeah.
get better at that. So yeah, I think this is always a process. But to me, Gooley, from a physical point of view, this is a guy I if he wants to become the the more rounded and complete version that he pictures himself to become with that physicality that's in him, I think that if he was able to give himself the means to do it completely with a bit more strength and a bit more weight, that'd be really nice. So maybe that this is something that he'll be able to focus on during the summer.
Mm.
Ivan Demidov, the big summer for him, and we brought it up on the pod before, but the importance of those few games at the end of the season, but mainly the playoffs, being exposed to North American game, the intensity of the playoffs. I think that the knowledge that he gained, it's not necessarily as much a question of physical training for him, although that's part of it, but the knowledge that he has now of what it takes to survive NHL hockey and NHL playoffs, I think that it's going to go a long way into how he's going to prepare for next year. So it's a big summer for him, but it's a big summer just in how is he going to apply in his preparation all the stuff that he learned during those playoffs.
Yeah.
So
Who's your third guy?
Patrick Laine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's no, but it's worth noting. I mean, like honestly, like his summer was cut. He didn't have a full summer to prepare last year. He's coming off shoulder surgery. He was
Yeah.
getting help from the NHLPA, NHL assistance program. Like, I mean, it's that he didn't have the ideal prep for last season. Far from it. And then obviously his knee gets busted. So yeah, no, I agree. It is a big, and he seemed eager to have like a full summer of training to prepare, and get kind of the best version of himself on the ice. So yeah, that's totally fair.
Plus, for Laine, it's going to be a contract year for him. So I don't know how much of an incentive it's going to be. Obviously, somewhere along the line, he's going to want to show the best version of himself in order to help his case contractually. I don't know if he's one of those guys that is motivated primarily by that. I don't know, but it's for any athlete. It's an important moment. When you just prior to free agency, can you showcase yourself the best way possible? So it's for him to,
Just
and
ask
if he,
Christian Dvorak.
no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if he wants to showcase himself, yeah, this is the one off season, the last off season where he can make a case for himself that he's a star player in this league. And because if he doesn't start on the right foot with Montreal or doesn't have a good season, after that, he's just going to be this guy who's could have been
Yeah.
and was not quite, So it's an important. It's not, again, to use what the question that was asked to Kent Hughes regarding Doc. It's not Liney's last chance, but he's definitely in a pivotal moment in his career. A little bit like what Jonathan Drouin was facing when he, in his last season with Montreal too.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. And also a player who got help from the player assistance program and had some mitigating circumstances to his performance and has found a nice home in Colorado, but definitely not
Yeah.
the same tier of player as he was in Montreal. So yeah, no, it is. And honestly, like I found it refreshing to hear Patrick Laine talk about the season after this. I thought it was good. It was healthy for him to be able to be like, you know what? I had a lot of fun playing. I wasn't having fun playing before. I almost retired. I didn't like the game. I'm happy to love the game again. Like I think a lot of people saw that as kind of corny or just lacking self-awareness or whatever, but I thought it was fully self-aware and it's what's important to him. Like it's for him to perform, I think he needed that first. He needed to find that love of playing hockey again before he can get his game back to prior levels. If he ever will be able to. He might not. But, you know, that mental aspect of the game, the physical trouble he went through, all of it contributed to the version of Patrick Laine we were seeing towards the end of the season, which was not a good version, frankly. And so I think a full summer, yeah, like he's got to show it right from the start that he's a different player. But I really thought it was good of Ken Hughes to have his back too publicly. You know, like he could have just left it at we don't make the playoffs without Laine. Were there issues? Yes, his 5-on-5 game was not consistent, and he could have just left it at that. But he made a point of saying that in all of my interactions with him, he always seemed like eager to learn, eager to improve. He was engaged. He wanted to be a part of the team. He didn't have to say that, you know, like he and I don't think he would have said that if he didn't mean it, you know. And so I thought that was a good endorsement because I think I think I would include myself, like media, fans, people on the outside, assume that that's not the case with that guy. You know, it's always followed him around that he's kind of aloof and he's not really doesn't really fit in with the group well. I thought it was a good move, whether he meant it or not, frankly, but I thought it was a good move for Ken Hughes to say that publicly and kind of have his back and show a public show of support for a player who went through a lot. And, you know, I think Ken Hughes recognizes that the best version of Patrick Laine could help this team. And anything he could do to get the best version of him, he's going to do. And I thought that was a good little extra boost of support that he threw his way that he didn't have to.
The will to get better is probably one of the main components that can help him remain a popular teammate. You know, there were issues with Laine in the past with other teams where it seems like there were conflictual situations, but the being willing to learn, put in the effort to get better, this is the best way to keep your teammates on your side. Because if you're disinterested, or you assume that you know how it works and just let me do my thing, and you don't have the results that follow, then it can become really an issue.
And I think it was such a talking point, Laine's play at 5-on-5 for so long, that I think it did start to wear on the team. Like a lot of teammates had to answer questions like, "What can you do to help Laine at 5-on-5?" Whereas I think a lot of times they're like, "Well, what can he do to help Laine at 5-on-5?" You know, like why aren't you asking him these questions? Why are you asking me these questions? So, and it should be said that Patrick Laine didn't regularly show up to speak with reporters. He did occasionally, but he wasn't a regular at doing that. But definitely, if you take some accountability and put it on yourself to improve, and realize where your game is deficient and work to improve that, then yeah, you're gonna win some points in the room for sure. But I think there were some guys who were growing a little tired of the narrative of why aren't the Canadiens doing enough to help Laine at 5-on-5 kind of thing. That grew kind of tiresome sometime in February or so.
Yeah. So I mentioned the fact that Laine will be entering a contract year, but before that, this summer, there are some guys who have new contracts to sign. Some of them are potentially departing UFAs. Others are restricted free agents that are simply in a position to negotiate their new contract. So we thought it'd be interesting to take a look. There's this data outlet called AFP Analytics. People that are more into numbers than I am have given me their stamp of approval, saying that this outlet is legit and they're not just goofing it up. And you can look at their contract projections and make it at least a relevant starting point to a discussion. And so they're not the only ones who release contract projections. I know that Evolving Hockey
Hockey actually released theirs today. And so we're going to compare the two. Let's see what we have. Yeah.
Perfect. So we've got 5 names that are of particular interest. The first 2 are UFAs of interest to Montreal, Armia and Dvorak. So, okay. So if I look, let's just discuss one guy after the other. But AFP Analytics was projecting a 2-year deal for Armia at roughly $2.5 million a year. So slightly less than what he gets now, because he's north of $3 million now. So he would take a pay cut, and that would be
he's 3.5. No, that's significantly less than he takes now.
Yeah. So how much is Evolving Hockey? How much do they have him at?
Evolving Hockey's most likely contract scenario for Yoel Armia is a 3-year contract at just shy of $2.7 million a year.
Okay, so 1 year more, a tiny bit more money, but not by much.
No.
So in all likelihood, we expect, the projections are that he's going to be
Armia's at 3.4. Armia's at 3.4 right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when he signed that deal, everybody thought, "Woof, that's a lot of money for that guy." Despite the amazing
he was coming off that. He was coming off that final run, but it was a lot of money. But he was in his prime.
Small sample size.
Well, it's something to keep in mind with Dvorak, right? I mean, when we get to him, but anyhow, we'll get to him in a sec. But that's something to keep in mind for sure. So Armia, I know that Armia said that he really wants to stay. He was quite adamant about it. Like, it was unusual to see Armia talk so openly about his contract. He hated all year. He hated doing it. Finally, on the last day, he's like, I told them I really want to be here. He kept talking about the team's future, what they could get from the playoffs, and how it's going to help us. I would hesitate to give Armia a 3-year contract. 2-year contract, like AFP is suggesting, is probably makes it a better chance, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't think Armia brought them. Like, I know he was playing through an injury, but he didn't bring the same sort of heavy hockey as he did the last time he was in the playoffs. And when Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, particularly Jeff Gordon, talks about, adding some compete and improving in the compete comp category, I wouldn't suggest that Armia didn't compete, but he was adequate in that department. I feel he was okay. I didn't consider him to be. He wasn't noticeably competitive the way he was 4 years ago.
No.
I found.
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing that goes for him is that he's become a lot more regular in what he gives from night to night. Since last year, the brand of hockey that he offers, it's not as much a jack in the box as it was before. So the consistency is interesting. The compete though remains. It's not a calling card necessarily.
No.
And the people who have been listening to our podcast for a long time, they know that we've got this expression of the Armia things.
Armia things, yeah.
Yeah, so the things that showcase his little fine abilities with the puck, little strokes of genius in the middle of the play that it doesn't really amount to either a scoring chance or a goal, but in the flow of play, there's a little spark of magic that appears.
There's just things that are uniquely his ability to do. Like he does certain things that no one else can really do, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we have not mentioned on the press box, you and I, the Armia things very well.
I think the broken hand, the broken hand impacted his ability to do a lot of the Armia things. It it involves his handling radius, right? Like he can handle the puck in a very wide radius. He can handle it out wide. He can handle it in his feet. He can handle it with two guys around him. He can handle it in open space. Like he's got a very, very wide radius of where he not only handles the puck, but handles it in an extremely skillful way. Well, the broken hand meant he wasn't doing that. And so that's where the Armia things kind of went by the wayside a little bit, I think, because of the broken hand.
Yeah, late in the season. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So bringing him back, I think that the price that AFP suggests at 2 years, 2.5 million, whether it's in Montreal or somewhere else, a team that would be willing to give him that contract, I think it's a fair amount. For Montreal, the interest of bringing him back would definitely be because of his PK ability.
Yeah,
but
sure.
at the same time, for probably the same amount, you could find a guy that's not necessarily as good, but who could give you some good services on the PK, but who would probably show more of a high compete, a bit more
A more physical guy.
Yeah, that's it. So I think that for that sort of money, investing it more on sandpaper and asking that sandpaper guy to chip in on the PK, that seems to me like a more likely scenario.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it was nice to see Armia, make such a plea to stay, but I think he's going to have to come under that number to stay.
Yeah.
Like if he wants a 2-year deal, I think he's going to have to take probably 2 million or maybe even less. I don't know, but like he's got to really make it worth the Canadiens' while to bring him back. And potentially like 2 years, the term is right because you're not really blocking anyone. There's no one that's imminently going to come in and immediately start killing penalties and immediately start doing all the things that Armia does. So for 2 years, you're giving the Jack Eyes and the Tucks and all the people in Laval the appropriate amount of time to grow into a role like that. So
yeah.
But I would lean towards not bringing it back.
Okay, Christian Dvorak. That's an interesting one because AFB Analytics has Christian Dvorak getting a 2-year deal worth $1.765 million.
This is where the disparity is quite high. So
okay,
Evolving Hockey's most likely contract for him is a 4-year deal at just north of $4.2 million a year. So almost no pay cut at all. If he were to sign a 2-year deal, Evolving Hockey has the most likely cap hit at just over $3 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Because in theory, he'd be hitting free agency again at 31. He could sign another contract. So yeah, it's 4 years, just over 4.2, and that's the most likely one for Evolving Hockey. Or 2 years at just over 3. So that's a pretty wide disparity between the two.
Well, we spoke about Suzuki's small sample size after the Four Nations. You mentioned also Armia in the playoffs in 2021, small sample size. Dvorak's also a small sample size in terms of his level of effectiveness when he really raised his game at the end of the season. So I think
Evans was also a small sample size when he signed his contract.
Good point. Good point. But I don't think that he was signed based on that offensive contribution.
No, that's the reason why they didn't. The reason why that negotiation wasn't going anywhere was because the Canadiens refused to give him a contract based on that small sample size. They stuck to their guns, and eventually Evans accepted their offer, basically. And so, that was them recognizing. And Kent Hughes said it publicly. This is a guy who scored 1 goal in an entire season. You have to keep that in mind. Like Christian Dvorak, for the bulk of the time that this administration has been running this team, has either been injured or, not nearly as effective as he was down the stretch. I don't think he was as bad as everyone thought he was. There were a lot of things that he does that coaches love. But the offensive stuff wasn't there. So
no,
it's that's the Canadiens will definitely keep that in mind in any discussion on Dvorak, for sure.
But I mean,
But they're not going to go to
AFP
that number. They're not going to go to the evolving hockey number. There's no way.
no, and I don't expect him to sign for what AFP suggests at 2 years, 1.7. I think that he's going to be able to get a lot more. We're still talking about a centerman who's in his 20s, who wins faceoffs, who is a good penalty killer, and even though you might buy or not the offensive production, what the eye test showed more than anything is how all of a sudden he had some sort of leg surgery that nobody was aware of because he gave himself a set of new legs. He was noticeably faster this season
Magic
than
legs.
any time before. Those are magic legs.
Forrest Gump magic legs, yes.
I bet he would love that comparison.
They're my magic legs.
So this is something that, outside of purely statistics, that speed is repeatable. This is something to say, you know what? He can come back, and if we sign this guy, we can hope that he's going to have those wheels for us next year. Because you can wonder why he wasn't there before. I mean, he was wearing those braces for forever. All the time that he played in Montreal, he had those braces to his knees. But there was clearly something, post surgery, and him coming back this year and being fully healthy, 100%, and it make a positive difference. So a team that signs him, whether it's Montreal or another team, they might not think that he's going to be getting 40, 45 points, but at least they can say, we're going to get a reliable third line center who's going to kill penalties, and he was not going to slow us down necessarily, because he was average as a skater for the Canadiens, but he was certainly not below average. So if you're looking for pace and looking for, can you follow the play with your feet? Dvorak really held his own this season in that aspect.
Yeah. The guy I wonder about, who's also UFA, I don't know how much he's going to get, but like Radek Fax is a UFA.
Yeah.
He's a lefty, 57% in the faceoff circle, kills penalty, does everything Dvorak does. No
Plays a
offense.
bit less, right?
Plays a bit less, not a whole lot of offense. I think he had 15 points this year, but tough, physical. He hits guys. Could be an alternative on the open market. The thing about Dvorak is that they have to replace him. Like Armia, I think there are people in-house who could maybe replace what he does. I'd like to see Newhook start to kill penalties. I'd like to see Heineman start to kill penalties.
Yes.
But Newhook cannot kill penalties as a centerman because he can't win a draw, right? So, I mean, you need a centerman who can win draws from either side. So we have Evans on the right side. Dvorak would need to be replaced. He has a much more... the Canadiens don't have an internal solution to replace what Dvorak does. So that's what makes me wonder if the Canadiens will consider signing him to a contract. Dvorak on locker cleanout day sounded to me like a guy who would be curious at least to see what the market had to offer. His first answer to his first question was, "Yeah, I loved it here."
Okay.
Past tense kind of thing,
right.
So like I feel like that doesn't mean he's leaving or anything, but sometimes your subconscious kicks in. And that's the answer. You have there's a finality to it, and that's when you use the past tense in your first answer. To me, it's somewhat of a tell, So, but I think the Canadiens need to.
Yeah, just like
replace
Evans, just like Evans in just before the Four Nations. He came back, and during the Four Nations, he packed his stuff.
Well,
he packed his apartment because he thought he was leaving.
Yeah.
So, and he used the past
and that was the last time we talked to him until he signed his contract. The Canadiens hit him from the media for weeks.
Yeah. There's a difference in discourse, right? Where Armia projects himself still as a member of the Canadiens, and
yes,
yeah,
no, it was striking. The difference between the two was striking. It was,
yeah. But didn't they make their choice by signing Evans and not Dvorak? Because you bring both back, you have not necessarily strengthened your center line. It remains pretty much the same.
Yeah.
You have, and you're not making way for Kapanen or Beck in the next couple of years.
But the reality is that Kapanen and Beck don't impact Dvorak. They're both right shots. They have too many right shot centermen, right?
Yeah.
I'm not convinced both of them are going to play center in the NHL. Maybe even either of them are going to play. Like Beck's playing on the wing in Laval, right now. So it's like who knows where they're actually going to be in the NHL. But like Dvorak to me is a need. Like if he walks, which he probably will, frankly, no matter what projection you use, no matter what, I don't know the extent, but the Canadiens are not like signing Evans to me was blocking Kapanen and Beck
Right.
more so than signing Dvorak would be. They need someone like Dvorak. They would have to go find someone externally to replace what Dvorak does, and that's why I brought up Faxa. Like if Dvorak walks and Faxa manages to hit the parkette, he doesn't sign in St. Louis, and then we can hear Marty saying, Scheifele was hurt when he was rocked by Faxa. That's I don't know if you saw the Jim Montgomery clip, but
Yeah.
in the first round. But anyhow, but yeah, I think those
Didn't he
projections are.
Didn't
What's
he
that?
use his number instead of naming him Faxa?
Yeah, number 55.
Right.
Number 55 got hurt on the first when he got rocked by Faxa. It was actually shades of Paul McLean. It was
Paul McLean, player 61. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, it was a nice touch. But yeah, I do think like Armia, they don't have to replace externally if they don't want to. But Dvorak, I think they would, and I think that's the big difference in the discourse between the two guys.
But the thing with the UFA is that it's not just up to the team. The player has whatever he chooses to do. He's willing to go wherever he wants, and if he wants to, let's say, go play in the US, well, that's
it could be his chance.
That's his.
And it's probably it's his last chance to sign a relatively long term, like a 4 or 5 year deal. This is your window.
Yeah.
And, he had a good stretch of hockey at the perfect time. So maybe he can cash that in. And if he can, then power to him and good for him. And I'm glad that if that's the last we see of Christian Dvorak in a Canadiens uniform, I'm glad he ended it with 2 months of really solid hockey, like the best hockey he's played in a Canadiens uniform for that consistent a time.
Yeah.
Because, there was always a good player in there. It just didn't all come together. And then for it to do that just before leaving, it helps himself. This contract situation. It puts a nice spin on his time in Montreal, which was overwhelmingly negative up until that time. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. And you know what? There was a good player in there. And always remember that Martin St. Louis, when he first arrived, he inherited back Dvorak from an injury to finish the 21-22 season.
Yeah.
And Dvorak finished really on a high note offensively. So the first impression that Dvorak gave,
he was almost a point per game.
It was a positive impression, his first impression that he gave Marty. So
I think his final 20 games, he was close to a point per game that year. He was like 8, he had like 17 or 18 points in his last 20 games, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, 3 RFAs. I think that the most interesting will be Emil Heineman, who finishes his entry-level contract and his rookie season in the NHL. So you mentioned how the offense dried up after he was hit by a car. It's just using those words together.
It really is a turning point in his season. Honestly, like it legitimately is.
It's a turning point in the intersection too.
Yeah, exactly. It was an unexpected turning point as far as Emil Heineman's concerned. But anyhow,
so AFP Analytics has him at 3 years, and hold on to your seat, $2.88 million.
What? $2,880,000
for on a 3-year deal.
Wow. Well, this sounds Evolving Hockey sounds a lot more realistic. They have Heineman, his most likely contract being a 2-year deal at just over 1.2 million, 1.208 million. For 3 years on Heineman, it goes up to 1.35. There is the only time it goes above 2.8 is on an 8-year deal. Evolving Hockey has an 8-year deal with Heineman at just under 3.2 million. Honestly, if Heineman wants to do that, I would consider doing that. wouldn't be a bad idea. But anyhow, they have his most likely contract at 2 years, 1.2, which sounds perfectly reasonable bridge contract for an older rookie. I'm sure Heineman would sign it. It would be a one-way deal.
Yeah.
I don't really see much of an issue with Heineman. I don't think there's any real complications ahead on that negotiation, personally. But
No, I think it's just the extent of his offensive ceiling that may be put in question. The longer you go in a contract, the more committed, obviously, you are to the player. But how committed can you be in regards to the type of offense that he's going to provide you? He was convincing. At the beginning of the season, everything that he would shoot would end up in the net. But how sustainable was that? Over 82 games, can you legitimately think that you have a perennial 20-goal scorer in that kid from this point on? Or if you're not sure, then maybe going for something that's shorter term and see how things evolve might be the better play, because that he's going to be you're probably your best forechecker. He's defining himself more and more through that aspect of his game. You mentioned the fact that he might end up playing on the PK too, but you're getting paid also to score goals, and I'm not sure if there's a lot of clarity as to how much he can bring in that department for the future.
yeah, I think, well, it's not clarity, but the tools are there. Like he has one of the three best shots on the team, as far as I'm concerned. Like you have Line. Well, now I guess you have Demidov, so maybe top four. Like top five. So like Caulfield, Suzuki, Line, Demidov, and then it's him, as far as I'm concerned, in whatever order that is. But the fifth guy on that list to me is Heineman, and he should be able to score, I would say, 15 to 20 goals semi-regularly. I don't know. I don't think it's that vital to get more than that from him if he's a forechecking, penalty-killing sort of physical player. But yeah, I think that shot's going to get him at least 10 goals a year. That's what I see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I think you can bank on that, which is it's a good thing to be able to bank on. I mean, that's a skill that doesn't leave, right? So generally, it ages well. So,
but players will, you've got this expression of betting on himself. It's also the player who could say, you know what, I'm going to prove you guys that there's more to me in terms of offense. So I would rather take a shorter contract in order to show you that in a rather shorter term that I can put some goals in the net and get a higher payday after that. So it could come from the player too.
It's also worth noting that when he got hit by the car, now Emil Heineman's older, so keep that in mind. Yeah. But the rookie goal scoring leaders in the NHL at that time were Matvei Michkov with 13 goals in 43 games, Macklin Celebrini with 13 goals in 34 games, and then it was Emil Heineman with 10 goals in 41 games. He was on a 20-goal pace when he got hit by the car.
Yeah.
That damn car.
Do you have his shooting percentage at that point?
21.7. So a little high, but like not outrageously high. Like it's high for sure. Like it's I'm sure his shooting percentage from that point on was probably much, much lower than that. But
it was pretty much, it was zero.
It was zero. It would have been zero. Yeah, exactly. But so, yeah, I think it is zero, actually. It's not even on the list. Let's see. But anyhow, I like the player, like he's
for sure.
So in his case, I would consider tacking on some term if I could at a reasonable rate, like if you could get him on a 4-year deal at $2 million a year, I'd consider that.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Not sure his agent would, but I would love that.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe he sees that as an opportunity. I don't know. It's like you never know. So
Mm.
some players he might look at it and be like, "Wow, that's $8 million,"
Yeah.
you know, which would be a very sensible way of looking at it. Like, yeah, it's $8 million. Sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah.
That's exactly how Jake
But
Evans felt about his $1.7 million a year deal. He was
it's
like,
also
that's a lot of cash.
it's also a guy who was traded twice before his NHL career, so it would provide some stability. The signal is saying, you know what, this is your home for good. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. He
there
was
might be
traded for
some.
Sam Bennett and Tyler Toffoli, though.
Yeah,
It's a pretty good track record. Like he's traded for two very good players. Like it's like, you know, and he had two
yeah.
different teams that wanted him, but anyhow, Sam Bennett, Tyler Toffoli. I think you can go to bed feeling pretty good about yourself, knowing that you were traded twice for those two guys.
Mm.
Um, okay, well, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, very quickly, maybe Jadon Struble and Jakub Dobeš. Not much. Listen, again, I think that AFB is out to lunch on this one, but they're projecting 2 years at 1.78 to Struble. No way that he's going to get that much money. If he
No.
gets 2 years at 1.1, they'll be good.
Well, Evolving Hockey has 2 years at just under 1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is clearly something in the numbers that suggests that this kid is more than a seventh defenseman, and there's room for growth there.
Well,
And
his on ice differentials were vastly helped by playing with Lane Hudson for a few weeks before Gouldy's return.
but he proved he could play with him. That's the thing.
He
That's
proved
good
he could play with him, and then he proved he could play without him, which was, I think, even more important.
Yeah.
Because the fact that he could play with him, you know, was that's a feather in your cap. That's a good thing. But then when he got moved off that pair, when Gouldy came back, and then he started playing with Savard, which is the complete opposite of playing with Lane Hudson, and he still managed to pull his weight out there, and with, let's be honest, like at 5-on-5, a bit of an anchor on your right, you know. So it's like, I think he had a good season all in all. Some ups and downs, but got through it. I think he handled the Carrier arrival really well, like a professional.
Yeah.
Didn't complain, didn't do anything, just went to work, and eventually got his chance and took it. Like he took Arbor Jackai's job for a long time.
How about Dobeš? What do you got for him?
Dobeš, according to Evolving Hockey, 3 years, just over 1.1.
Okay. In his case, I think that the one-way aspect of those years would probably be significant.
Yeah.
You know, so I could see him like getting a two-way deal for the first year and a one-way for the second and third.
Yeah.
Something like that. But
what's AFP have on him?
Well, it's not that different actually. He's at 2 years, 1.036.
Okay, so it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
See, I don't think any of these contracts are going to be all that complicated for the Canadiens.
No, Dobeš has got zero leverage anyway, and he's just happy to be at the NHL. So,
yeah, he said it. He said it himself.
Yeah.
There's only 64 of these jobs, and I have one of them. I am so happy about that. It's like, I think he was asked, like, is it tough to not play all the time? And anyhow,
that's good. We had thoughts of talking about the Laval Rocket because we both attended their their clinching game against the Cleveland Monsters. They're playing their next game only on the 14th, so we'll just park it for now. We've got a lot of notes on the Laval Rocket. On our chat, we have Matt Crawford who suggested to us to go through their roster and sorting their roster in tiers of probabilities of each player joining the Canadiens at some point. So that may be something to explore, but we'll keep that for another time and maybe look at how the beginning of the series against Rochester goes before we dive any deeper with that.
Talk about it on Monday. Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we might have other plans for Monday though.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, everybody. Well, that was a short one, but I hope that you enjoyed it. We'll be
It's an
back on
hour.
Monday. Yeah, well, that's half an hour less than sometimes what we
Right.
do. So
Okay.
that's good. See, it goes so fast when you're in pleasant company. You see, so I'm with
Yeah.
you, and it goes fast. Goes fast.
Yeah. I'm
All
in
right.
Gatineau.
Yeah.
You're in some dungeon in Radio Canada, and so it's all good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll be in studio in 10 minutes, so I'm gonna jump
Okay.
on TV right now.
Enjoy
Okay.
the playoffs, everyone. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks very much.